Shocking new developments in the trial surrounding a woman accused of hitting her boyfriend with her car and then leaving him for dead. Her boyfriend was a Boston police officer. This week, one of the lead investigators took the stand and was forced to read aloud disparaging text messages he wrote, including one that called Karen Reed, the defendant, a whack job. And that was just one of them. State Police Lieutenant Michael Proctor also admitted to making fun of her Crohn's disease. In other text messages to friends, Proctor referred to seeing the victim writing, quote, "She waffled him. I looked at his body in the hospital. He was banged up." Defense attorneys claim those texts show Proctor made up his mind of Reed's guilt before investigating the case, which he denies. Reed, in the meantime, has been nicknamed America's happiest murder defendant for smiling many times in court until she appeared to lose her cool with her attorney during trial last month. The 44-year-old is facing second-degree murder charges. She maintains her innocence. So joining me now is legal analyst and trial attorney Misty Marris. Misty, so great to see you. There's a lot to get to in this case. I know we've talked about it before, but now there's these texts from one of the investigators, the lead investigator, about the defendant. How damaging is that to the prosecution's case, if at all?
Nicole, this was a huge blow to the prosecution's case. Let's keep in mind what the defense has been right from the beginning. The defense has said that basically Karen Reed was framed. There was a huge conspiracy involving law enforcement to cover up what happened to O'Keefe. Now, these text messages, not only are they incredibly off-putting, incredibly unprofessional to say the least, but they also show that the integrity of the investigation was imperiled. So here we have the lead investigator making these unprofessional comments, suffering no consequence from his superiors at the police department. And in addition to that, having blinders on, only investigating Karen Reed. So it's twofold. Number one, these messages obviously very off-putting, but the other piece of it is it speaks to the defense in this case that Karen Reed was looked at right from the beginning and no other alternative investigations were conducted. They had their mindset on her right from the get-go. And of course, that investigation is incredibly impugned.
Okay, so Misty, from your perspective, now having this added to the mix, what is the biggest hurdle right now for the prosecution?
The prosecution is going to have to do something to rectify this. And we've seen a little bit of where they're going. You can tell with the testimony of Proctor. They're saying, oh, well, yes, I did make those comments. They're unprofessional, but they did not impact the investigation. Just because there's unprofessional comments does not mean that the investigation was impacted in any way. And that's something that the prosecution is really going to have to focus on as they continue down the road with this case and finding other corroborating evidence outside of the testimony of law enforcement, which really in this case is just not credible.
So, Misty, I asked you about the prosecution. I have to ask you about the defense. What is the defense's biggest hurdle?
The defense has always had the hurdle of trying to sell the idea of a conspiracy and a cover-up. You know the old adage, sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one. So telling the jury that there was this widespread and complicated cover-up and conspiracy involving law enforcement is a very hard sell. And not only that, keep in mind, the prosecutors have the burden of proof. When the defense presents this type of argument, it almost, in a way, shifts the burden to them to show the jury how this all unfolded and for the jury to accept that as an explanation. So they actually went a step further than just presenting an alternative theory of the case. It's a bit more than that. So the defense really has to lean in, I think, to this particular testimony. Talk about how this is the lead investigator. And you know what? When you have one bad apple, many more are going to fall from the tree. So focusing in on this is going to shape the remainder of their defense.
And Misty, last question for you. I want to ask you about Karen Reed's behavior. I mean, she's called the America's happiest murder defendant because she smiles so much in court. She also was seen losing her cool with her attorney, so kind of the other side of the coin there. Do you think her demeanor will impact the jury?
The jury is always watching, so they're definitely noticing some of this, what seems to be kind of bizarre conduct of smiling and looking happy. And then those interactions with her attorney, but ultimately the jury is going to be focusing on the evidence in the case and the application of the law. So certainly, yeah, they might be formulating some opinions, but the defense is going to get ahead of that, and they're going to say, you really have to focus on the prosecution, their burden, and whether or not they fulfilled it in this case.
All right. Always great to talk to you, Misty Marris. Thank you.
Thank you.